right, guys, welcome to the FightFit Podcast. Got Mark Derrick here to talk about the transformation. What's happening, mate?
Oh, I'm very, very well. Thank you for having me on again.
Thank you for coming on. We always stutter a little bit on the process to try and get you on the podcast, align our schedules a bit. Glad that you're here, though. Tell us about the transformation.
Well, basically, I came up with the idea. I've had the idea for a little while now. Pretty much seen a lot of transformations out there. There's some really, really good transformations at other gyms, and there's some transformations that I think could be done a lot better. And basically, we're looking at a transformation whereby, even though the goal is to change someone's body composition, we're looking at sort of creating habits and giving people skills that will actually that they can have long term. So eventually, if they finish the transformation with us or they decide to do something else, they've actually learnt something along the way, so they can apply some of the principles that they've learnt from a training perspective and sort of bind them together with the nutrition that they've learnt along the way.
Yeah.
So I suppose one of the big differences is, yes, we are looking at the training side of it and we're looking at the nutrition side of it, and we're trying to sort of bring the two together there.
Yeah.
Without, I suppose, here's a meal plan, follow that and only follow that, and here's your training plan and only follow that, and not really get really good results for the 8 to 12 weeks, and then afterwards, not everyone's sort of going to follow that meal plan as rigidly as would be followed. Just
for some background for some people who might not have watched the first podcast, because we did one a couple of months ago now, wouldn't it?
Yes.
One of the first ones that we did actually was with you, and we talked a lot about the strength and conditioning program that we've got going at FightFit, which you obviously have played a massive hand in sort of building that whole program, and the classes that we do. So the transformation now is like we've got the FightFit Challenge, which is the 8-week challenge for boxing, the FightFit Games, and now we're sort of trying to form a transformation program, and it's like can be like a really educational sort of
So I mean, we've sort of decided that we'd want a minimum of 12 weeks commitment from anyone who's wanting to do the transformation, but you can continue on afterwards. Like the program will evolve for those that want to stay on longer. So it's not just come in and repeat the same program. So someone could come in and do it for 6 months if they wanted to, or train for a year, train for 5 years, and the program can continually evolve.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the aim is to sort of give people the tools to sort of take that forward with them and not, put on the weight again after they finish an 8-week
so pretty
challenge.
much look at more of an evidence-based an evidence-based approach to training and nutrition. Not something that's heavily sort of media or driven in the media. Something that's you hear it and you just say, oh yeah, I understand that. That seems pretty simple. And I find that most things in relation to training and nutrition are pretty simple if you follow the basic principles. To give you an example for training wise, if we're looking at changing body composition or increasing lean muscle mass, the main driver of that, apart from adherence, that's pretty important, is just increasing your volume load over time, and that's sets times reps times weight, increasing that number over time. So let's say you do a 12-week block of training and you get some really good results from it. You continue training for the next 12 weeks and you basically almost not go backwards, but you don't really see any progress made. And you probably find that the program you've done for the second 12 weeks or the second lot of 6 months is fairly similar, or if not a little bit lower in volume than what you had previously. So you won't see those gains. So it's looking at that long-term sort of programming approach. I suppose the biggest thing is with most transformations, a lot of people are coming from such a low base. They're quite sedentary, may not have done any training for quite a while, and may have sort of they want to get in and make a change to their body. It's very easy to follow any program for 8 to 12 weeks and make changes to your body. It doesn't really have to be that structured. As long as they're turning up and doing some form of exercise, they're going to be seeing changes to their body regardless, because the body's quite an adaptive organism. After a longer period of time, it becomes harder to make those changes. So it's sort of teaching people the skills early on, so they can see, you can see those continued changes over time.
Okay, cool. So when we talk at the gym, obviously every week, and you always ask me how my bench press is going.
That's it. We tried to have a look at that.
You've tried to tell me a few times about the way in which I can sort of slowly sort of gain strength by slowly lifting the weights that I Or slowly sort of lifting the amount of weight that I'm doing
Yep.
with every bench press?
Yep.
So what advice would you give me?
It really depends if we're talking straight strength or we're talking about someone looking to increase
So
strength.
say I wanted to transform, like the body composition's also obviously a benefit, but if I wanted to just sort of get stronger and transform the way that I train and eat.
Yeah, well, we'll be discussing these in the seminars as well. So the training seminar for those that are watching will be on the 14th of September.
Yep.
But basically, you sort of look at a bit of a hierarchy of sort of a bit of a hierarchy that we want to what's the word we want to adhere to. So obviously, with any program you follow, the most important thing is you've got to adhere to it. So if you're not doing it, it's so basic, it's ridiculous. Like I always say an average program done at the right intensity will always trump world-class programming performed half-baked, essentially.
Why do you say that?
Simply because what I stated before, the biggest driver of hypertrophy is going to be your volume load. So if you're missing sessions, so let's say, we get the best coach in the world and they write you the best program possible, and you sort of do it half-baked. You miss a session here and there, you're not really hitting the intensities thereafter, so the volume load isn't there. Whereas let's say we just get, a run-of-the-mill trainer writes you an average program, still semi-logical, some sort of progression to it, and you follow it at the right intensity and you're adhering to it all the time. You get better benefit doing that than you would world-class programming, simply because you're not getting the volume out of the training, and you're not able to make that progression.
Yeah.
From a body composition point of view, we look at you look at the exercises that you're doing. So I'm very big on big compound movements, and I think they're great. But if we're looking at body composition, your body doesn't really distinguish between exercises. It only understands forces going through your body. So again, if I relate that
just because you're in the gym doesn't mean that you're going to lose weight.
Yeah, well, it's sort of similar there. But let's have a look at a program that looks like we use a bunch of machine weights, lots of isolations, no real squats, bench presses, deadlifts, no big barbell movements or anything like that. But we're overloading every time. So whether we're overloading by increasing the number of reps, increasing the number of sets, increasing the weight, or doing a combination of them over a period of time, you'll get better benefit out of doing something so simple like that than you would, doing the big compound movements with everything else tied into it. That said, I like, incorporating some of those bigger movements because, that's sort of the next tier above. You look at incorporating big compound movements, applying the principle of overload. So that overloading principle of just increasing the amount of work we're doing over time. And it's not
Is that what it's called, overload?
Yeah, progressive
Sounds
overload. What's the story? For those watching, if you look up, what's his name? Milo of Croton. That's the story of progressive overload, where it came from. I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but the story goes something along the lines of, the farmer carrying a baby bull over his shoulders, and he's walking up and down the field, and every day he did it. He walked a couple of laps. And every week or so, the bull would get a little bit bigger. And then someone walked past one day and there's this crazy guy carrying a full-size bull across the field. And they're like, how the hell did you do that?
Yeah.
Because you could never imagine carrying a bull. It's the same way you look in the gym. You see some people, you see an elite level power lifter pulling 350, 400 kilos off the ground. And it's just unfathomable to some people how you could pull that amount of weight off the ground. But what they haven't seen is the 10, 15, 20 years prior, where they started. They probably, may have started younger, or they're pulling 60 kilos off the ground first, refining that skill, refining the technique, gradually overloading. And again, progress isn't linear. So you're not always going to get better every week. To start with, you will. But after you've been training a little while, you're not just going to keep...
It's a common symptom, isn't it, though, the plateau, the 6 weeks,
Yeah.
the 6 week plateau. I'm not sure if there's any science to that, but a lot of people, train for those 6 weeks. They start to see improvement. When they start to see the improvement, that's when they start to plateau.
This is where we can touch on the nutrition as well. So a lot of people see that if you can make really good progress, and this is where I think a lot of transformations have it backwards. You see they're only sort of 6, 8, maybe 12 weeks if they're lucky, and they're just increasing. So they increase the training intensity ridiculously, and they underfeed you. So there we are. So you're stressing the body on two levels. You're stressing the body with a high amount of training, usually high intensity interval training, and we're dropping the amount of calories we're consuming ridiculously. And you probably find that a lot of them are cutting out a lot of carbohydrates as well, which you find are the primary fuel source for a lot of high intensity interval training. So after 4 to 6 weeks, your body's just had enough. So it doesn't really want to train.
Sick. Is that when you start getting sick?
Yeah. There's, we get a bit more technical with that, but that's essentially why you're increasing your training load. You're dropping off the amount. Forget eating clean. Like you could be eating clean, eating next to nothing. That's still not very healthy for you. So you can cut out all processed foods and eat like 1,000, 1,200 calories and just wither away and increase your training out of sight. I wouldn't really call that too healthy from a performance point of view.
I was watching. I don't know if you've seen the Barry Michael and Lester Ellis documentary about the Melbourne fight.
I haven't. I've seen the fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I haven't seen the documentary. I'd love to though.
Barry Michael had to lose X amount of weight to get down to 6% body fat in order to make the weight to have that title fight. And he was on 1,000 calories a day, and he was training like 5-6 hours a day. Just to make the weight. And that's when, that's a different story. That's someone who's got mentally, just the mental fortitude.
Absolutely. And you look at the dollars on the line as well. Like, someone in a professional, if they're competing in a professional sport like that, and there's, huge dollars on the line. Like, I'm not really a big fan of water loading, even for some of the powerlifters that I coach. Unless it's like a really big national title or an international title.
What does water loading do on a weightlifting sense?
Well, basically enables you to lose or cut down quite a bit of weight or get to.
Do they weigh in? The weightlifters?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Some federations of powerlifting, they'll weigh in the day before, so there'll be a 24-hour weigh-in. Others will be a 2-hour weigh-in, so they'll weigh in on the day that they compete.
Aren't they all just absolute monsters? They're just what's the parameters?
Well, see, this is the thing everyone gets confused with. Like you see a lot of so powerlifting, they have some plus categories where that's where you see all the big monsters, and they're just massive units. But if you actually see people competing in weight classes, so there's all different weight categories. You've got the lighter weight guys coming up. Generally, if you're competing in a weight class, you want a little bit more muscle mass. You don't want to be really fat. You don't want to be super ripped, because obviously, if you're down to that sort of stage physique that you would have if you were to jump on stage and bodybuild, you'd probably wind up getting pretty sick. So you want to make sure you're still carrying a little bit of body fat there. But for powerlifters competing in a weight class, generally you want as much muscle mass as they possibly can have, because that's more contractile tissue. If they're competing at a weight class, you don't necessarily want them fat. So let's say you have someone competing in the 84 kilo class, you don't want them sitting at 60 kilos of lean muscle mass and 24 kilos of fat there. You'd probably you'd look at building up their lean muscle mass as much as possible, because then they'll be stronger at their weight class.
Yeah, okay.
Or the potential to be stronger will be greater because they have a greater amount of muscle.
And do they do the same thing that fighters do, in the sense that they'll starve themselves of water and dehydrate themselves in order to get down to a smaller weight class?
Oh, some people do some crazy things, but generally, like with water loading, you're gradually increasing the amount of water you've got until usually the day of competition, and then you sort of stop drinking water and then pee it all out. So actually increasing the amount of water. But again, that can play around with a lot of things that, again, I don't think super healthy. So I like, for the people that I train, I never do that. We just try and control everything through the diet and be as cautious as we possibly can.
And you literally play it by ear with every individual and what they will require from their diet?
Yeah, well, basically from a diet, we don't start dieting, 2 weeks out and go, oh crap, we've got to lose, 10 kilos. Like, you've planned it out. You know what weight division they're going to be competing in when they start the prep, whether it's 8, 12, 16 weeks out. You look at their body weight. I look at, how much we can realistically, I don't like training people into a comp prep just cutting weight, especially if it's their first couple of competitions. I think that's a bit silly. Usually for someone competing the first time, I just, I say, look, don't worry about your body weight. Let's just train. Let's get stronger. Let's look at creating some healthy habits around our nutrition. Look at eating better foods, better choices. I do teach them how to track their intakes and things like that, so they can see what's going into their body. And I find that that helps aid more intuitive eating later down the track as well. But yeah, we look at this is from a powerlifting point of view. We look at just slowly maybe slowly cutting down a little bit towards the end there, but not making drastic changes in such a short term. However, if they compete and they wanted to change the way their body looked, a good time to do that would be in an off season. So they're not actually training for a competition. because you think if you've got to get under the bar and lift as much as you possibly can, you don't want to be sitting in a massive deficit, losing heaps and heaps of weight, you know, in your first couple of competitions.
Yeah. Have you done a few competitions?
I had my first one a couple of weeks ago, believe it or
really?
not. So
I didn't even know.
I've done a lot of strength and conditioning, lots of weight training over the years, and you know, I've been training a few lifters, and I thought, well, you know, it's time to get in and compete. So
how'd you go?
Yeah, well, I pulled, squatted 252, benched 170, and deadlifted 270. So, yeah, look, I was happy with the day. It went really, really well, and I know basically I look at all the lifts and I know exactly what I need to do to improve. So
you'll keep doing that then?
Yeah, I'll enjoy that, and you know, still like to get in and do a few other things, and I still want to get back in and grab. I keep saying this, I'm just probably a jack of all trades. It's, you do one thing and you're like, oh, I want to do this, and you know, you start doing that other thing, you're like, oh, I missed this.
Said you wanted to get back in and grapple.
Yeah, some grappling, or you know, I do miss doing some striking as well. So
as in wrestling or as in jiu-jitsu?
Probably a bit of both. Yeah, but
I've always been interested in doing wrestling, but it's just takes such a toll on your body, I think.
It's very very difficult.
Yeah, so always see the wrestlers who just blow out their knees and backs and.
Geez, great.
Yeah, it seems like such a hurt sport.
Yeah, but it's a hard sport, and I suppose I like similar to boxing as well. Like it's and the same reason I like powerlifting or strength sports. There's no real magic behind doing it. You just have to do it and get good at it, and it takes a very long time. There's no shortcut. There's no little
10,000 hours rule.
Yeah, that's it. There's no secret to it. You just got to get in, do it.
Do your 10,000 hours,
and just realize that you'll get good at it when you start. But like, I mean, if you're looking at BJJ or wrestlers, you probably just go in and get smashed for the first 6 months, and then gradually learn a little bit and get a little bit better.
I've heard that about BJJ.
Yeah,
it's like so humbling to just sort of realize how much somebody can manipulate and have control over you.
When I started it years ago, I think I got tapped out by the first time I was rolling. It was about a 60 kilo. I tell this to the guys I teach at school as well. It was like a 60 kilo. She's probably less 60 kilo girl, and she triangled me, and she was smashing me, wiping the floor with me. I thought I was fit, strong, and it was very humbling. Yeah.
Yeah, they can just manipulate
absolutely,
your body
just
to make you
use everything. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. So tell us about the seminars that we've got. One on the 7th.
You do realize I do this. Yes.
Whenever you bring up MMA, it's my fault.
Paul's actually got a bet with me that I won't. I've got to stay on track for the seminars. I'm going to go off on a tangent. Someone will ask a question, and I'll end up talking about something else. So, I do get excited.
Stay on track.
Oh, I'll try.
So we'll talk about the one on the 7th first.
So the 7th of September. 7th of September. We're still finalising some times, but essentially we'll run the first one at Collingwood, and we'll run two on the one day. Run one at Collingwood first, and then we'll run one at South Melbourne. They'll be both in the morning. That's going to be on nutrition. So we're going to be introducing the concept of the transformation there a little bit towards the start, and then we're going to be talking about how to train. Looking at some nutritional sort of principles and ways of implementing these strategies to optimize body composition. So we'll talk a little bit about sometimes the difference between, changing body composition for the sake of changing body composition and looking at health as well. So eating to change body composition and eating to, and especially training to change body composition sometimes isn't necessarily always the healthiest. But that's where we sort of try and we're looking at doing both there. So we're looking at it from a health point of view as well as changing body composition there. So there'll be no like dehydrating and you think changing body composition to the point where you're going to get on stage to bodybuild. I don't really want to. It's not sort of what we're trying to achieve there.
So would you say that it would be more of like a say for example, right? You're somebody who eats probably a bit too much.
Yep.
Couple kilos overweight sort of thing. Would you then say, start by small steps, baby steps sort of thing? Or would you just say, here's your diet, boom?
Well, what I look at doing to start with is having them almost create a bit of a food diary for me so I can see what is actually being consumed. So I've tracked that for a couple of days. I use a program for this as well so people can track what they're eating and I can see what is going in. I currently use that with a few of my clients as well so I can not necessarily, bring them up, oh, you ate this and blah, 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 blah. It's more of an educational tool so we can help them create habits so they can see what's going into their body. I also write sample meal plans as well, not here's your meal plan, don't deviate from it and only eat this. It's almost like here are some here are some choices and here are some things based around what it sounds like you eat. And I basically just figure out, the amount of calories I want to start them on, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, their fats and their fiber. And what I'll talk about in the nutritional seminar, I don't really care too much about the carbohydrates and fats. I really look at, number one, just controlling the amount of food that they're intaking. Like, generally, if people want to lose weight, the main issue is they're just eating too much. So people are getting bigger. They're not doing one or two things. They're not doing enough exercise. Also, they're not staying as active, and they're just eating too much. And a lot of people blame that on slow metabolisms and things like that. But a lot of the time, it's most people's metabolism for 95% of the time isn't the issue. The issue is just they might be good for 4 to 5 days of the week.
I've used that excuse a few times.
And then they forget the 12 beers that they've drunk on Saturday night. And, they're like, oh, yeah, but I eat really well. And then it's, over Saturday, Sunday, after the 12th beer, you sort of forget what's happening. And, you sort of, you don't realize how much you're actually consuming. And then the average you're consuming there tends to be greater anyway. So you still keep increasing despite being good for 5 days. So in that case, it sort of sucks. But it's almost learning how to control look at their calorie intake first. So then I usually look at their protein intake. So if you can get them eating a certain amount of protein with their calories, and then I look at their fiber. And I don't really care too much about their carbohydrates.
What kind of
and
stuff's
fats.
really good for fiber?
Fruit and vegetables. So if I can get their fiber intake really high, I know they're eating things like fruit and vegetables. You've got different oats and seeds and things like that as well. And basically, what that helps with as well, generally, the more you eat, the more fiber you'd want to consume. And it basically just helps with your digestion. So removing toxins from the digestive system, so the intestines there, and helping the absorption of nutrients through the body. So if you're eating a lot of food and you're not consuming a lot of fiber, you probably find you might be getting a bit blocked up. And you're not actually getting the nutrients from the food that you're consuming, and it's not passing through your system as well as it could.
So what would be like another symptom of that? Because I'm just thinking of a friend of mine in mind right now who never eats fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
But has a very bland palate, and that he loves to eat carbs and stuff. He's not out of shape or anything like that, but he just has like very picky about the things he eats.
Yeah. Well, you probably find he's not out of shape because he's just controlling his portion size.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Your body is pretty adaptive as well. But generally speaking, I usually recommend somewhere between 15 grams to 18 grams of fiber, and that's not mine. That's through the International Society of Sports Nutrition. So that's sort of their recommendations there: 15 to 18 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories that you consume. There's a dietitian that I've just started working with, and I think she recommended about 40 grams for most people. Just put a blanket rule and go, most people require about 40 grams of fiber, and that's where they should sort of stick to. I'll stick to there, but pretty much, absorption of nutrients. So you look at your vitamins and your minerals that are being absorbed from your food. Because when we talk about calories, yes, it's, if you hit your calories, that's great. But then the age-old saying is, does that mean I can just eat shit and then I can, eat this amount of calories? And, in theory, yes. But generally, if you're eating junk food, what happens? Junk food's not very satisfying. So that's why you eat a lot of it. So whereas you find that food that's a little healthier, you can eat a lot of it and it's a little bit more, also you eat a bit, it's much more satisfying. So I'll give you an example. You have a can of Coke, that could be, or I'll use a can of Monster because we use that as an example on the camp we're at. So 230 calories, I think it was, for a can of Monster, like with all the sugar and crap in it as well. I could have 230 calories of that, or I could have 230 calories of a potato. So the same amount of calories. However, I have the can of Monster. Well, how do you feel after a can of Monster?
Like you want to climb up a wall for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but you could, exactly. But you probably want to eat still after. Right. You probably have that with some food.
Doesn't quench your thirst either.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have that, and you probably have some food with it. So you're getting the calories from the drink as well as the food that you're having. Whereas you have 230 calories of a potato, you eat that, and it's much more. What's the word? Satisfying.
Filling, and it's more of a slow release sort of.
Yeah. It's there's actually a thing looking at the satiety index of foods and looking at different types of foods and how satisfying those foods are, depending on and they're looking at whether someone's in a deficit. So if you're wanting to put someone into a caloric deficit, you probably look at feeding them foods that are quite healthy but also quite satisfying. So it's trying to fight against because if you're eating in deficit, you're going to be a little bit hungry.
So what would be a good meal prep? Say if I was doing my meal prep tomorrow, I want to prep for the whole week.
It really depends. What I had for breakfast this morning, I had, what I have, I had some, I had a cup of oats. I had half a tub of Chobani yogurt, or 2 servings of that. So that was about 35 grams of protein in that. And then I had a big serving.
Half of the big tubs?
Yeah, half of that. And then I had a serving of, it was frozen berries. I made that the night before, so then the frozen berries are...
You just put the frozen berries in the microwave? Or?
No. I left it in the fridge the night before, so it actually all melts in, and you stir it all together.
Nice.
It all melts in together, and I put that in. So from that, I had about 15 grams of fibre with the oats, as well as the raspberries. I think I had strawberries, blueberries, just a frozen berries pack. With, not just a little bit of yogurt. I actually had, probably about half the tub of... Now, that's for me. Like, someone else might have the same breakfast, but we might only have a serving of the yogurt with, so you just make everything a little bit smaller. Because that's the other saying as well. Like, you have, everyone knows you can't out-train a bad diet. You're eating crap and, I'm eating crap. But the other thing is, like, you could eat really healthily, or what you perceive to be really healthy, and you're still getting bigger. It's like you think of younger guys, they're all, chicken, broccoli, rice, cut out all processed stuff and only steam their vegetables and do that. And it's still getting big and they're blowing up like balloons. It's probably, most of the time it's because they're just eating too much of it. So they're not actually controlling their portion sizes, even though they've cut out all of their processed foods. They don't drink soft drinks. They're only drinking water and, they're just eating too much of what they're eating. So, yeah.
So you're just saying that portion size is the one that to really look out for?
At the start. So we sort of work our way through. You look at, your fibre intake. You look at meal timing. That's another big one. Everyone talks about meal timing. It's not as important as calories.
Are you talking about intermittent fasting and those?
That is a way of timing the meal. So, like some people say, you've got to have, 6-7 small meals a day, and that'll speed up your metabolism. And that's been proven to be a myth ages ago. However, intermittent fasting, I think Neil actually brought this up when he was on the podcast. So he's very big on intermittent fasting, and it does work. It works really well for people that are really busy and don't really want to track too much, and they don't want to, they don't want to spend the time doing, they've just got busy lives. It's easier to eat in an 8-hour window and then fast for 16 hours. If you can do that, it's pretty hard to eat in a caloric surplus, no matter what you're eating, in that 8-hour window. And then you have 16 hours where you're not eating. So yeah, it's still off that principle of calories in versus calories out. It's just we're not tracking it. All we're doing is trying to control when we're eating. So sometimes that can be a really good strategy for someone who is super busy and just doesn't really want to follow, doesn't want to eat around doesn't want to follow any, not necessarily a structured meal plan, but doesn't really want to change what they're eating too much. It can be a really good initial strategy to help them lose weight without changing what they're actually eating. Even though you'd want to look at what they're eating and slowly start to...
So I found that with intermittent fasting, I did the 8 hours for a while. Now I'm more of a 10-hour sort of guy because I just find it really hard to wait till 12. And if I'm at uni during the day or something, I find it really I switch off a little bit with my morning classes. So I like to eat it around 10 in the morning and then finish it about 8 at night at the moment. But I found that was really, really good for me in the fact that it could give my body that 16 hours. And then I felt like you'd kind of earned that meal at 12 o'clock, and I could have sort of bigger meals as well.
Yeah. But the other thing is, how long have you been doing that for now? Would you say?
I reckon I did it for, I did the 8 hours for about probably 4 months, I reckon.
Yep.
And I've been doing the 10 hours for a few months now as well.
Yeah. So what's the thing you're doing? You're adherent. It's like the training, it doesn't, that's what I'm trying to get across to people with the transformation as well and the nutrition seminar. Here are a bunch of principles. You're doing intermittent fasting. Your body's still counting the calories. You're still eating proteins, carbs, and fats. There's still an amount of fiber going into body. Meal timing is still important because you're obviously timing things around. The last little thing I'll talk about supplements, but we don't tend to go into that too much. It's just to see that it's not really that important if everything else hasn't been taken into account.
And I find it's a really valuable point that you're bringing up about, portion control as well, and, finding their right ways to do it, because I found that with intermittent fasting, it was something that worked for me. It has really helped me to recognize when I'm actually hungry. And it's helped me to recognize if I can go that 16 hours without eating, then I don't have to eat out of boredom.
That's one of the things people talk about, learning the difference between, your cravings and hunger. Like, what, are you just craving something or are you actually hungry? So that's probably one positive out of it as well. So people can actually learn the difference between the two. So, sometimes, you're craving stuff because, and this sort of gets into the mindset side of things, like it's at night, it's Friday night, or, it's cold outside and you're sitting down watching a movie and it's like, do I cook dinner? And you got your phone there, it's cold and you're like, ooh, Uber Eats looks pretty good. And then you're going through the menu like, yeah, I could grab some of this and that'll be good. And,
I've been good this week.
Hey, everyone's done it. I do it as well. So my partner will be watching. She'll tell you. So hey, she does too. But
you're in the doggy house after this.
No, but it just depends. Like, it's still, even with that, it's not, and that's not necessarily bad. I'm not saying don't do that. That's bad because it's about creating a healthy change to your lifestyle. It's not about, here is a meal plan, follow this, or buy these pre-prepared meals because you'll lose weight in 8 weeks. Yeah, of course you will. But what are you learning? Like, are you never going to go out to a restaurant again? Like, you can track meals at a restaurant as well. It's a little bit harder, in those initial stages. But then afterwards, you sort of get a bit of a understanding of how things all sort of fit together. And then that sort of aids more intuitive eating down the track. Like, everyone loves to talk about, eating intuitively or doing this. How can you do that if you're not tracking what you're eating? I just think it's impossible. Like, everyone loves to say, I'll intuitively eat and I just do that. I just eat what my body feels like. But then on the other side of the coin, they say, well, I'm not getting the results I'm after. I'm still putting on weight. I'm not increasing muscle mass. I'm not getting stronger. They haven't really looked at what's actually going into their body. So that's where I find that, if you're training and you're tracking to start with what's going into your body, learning about that you can start to learn some of the amounts and things that are going in there, that then you take it away down the track. You might just want to, make sure you're eating a certain amount of calories and protein. You might only track calories and protein. You might need to track. You just know what your body needs to consume.
Awesome. Well, if anyone wants to get involved with that, 7th of September, we got that seminar on. So if you guys want to get involved and come and see the seminar and everything, then
absolutely,
Big Marky Boy will be running that.
Hopefully a little bit less bigger.
And
he'll have to transform himself. There you go.
So then
that's why I'm wearing black again.
The strength jumper, I love it. You have to get me one of those ones.
That's it.
14th, we got another one.
14th is the training seminar. So we've got the nutrition seminar to start with. And on the 14th, we'll be covering some of the training principles that I talked about before. And again, we talk a little bit about, being specific to our goals. If we're training for body composition, or we're training to improve our body composition, what that actually looks like, in a program. What does a program look like to change your body composition? And it's not just this way. There are many good programs out there as well. But the one thing, the one key to changing body composition is resistance training and making sure you're hitting your weights. And relating that to nutrition, we actually talk about, from a calories perspective, we look at your total daily energy expenditure and where your energy is actually being expended. And in a sedentary population, majority of energy is expended through your resting metabolic rate. So the sum of all metabolic processes going on in your body, breaking everything down, that's probably where the majority of people's energy is being used. The next one would be your non-exercise energy expenditure. So things like sitting down, like we're doing now, staying active. That's why you see people, people track their steps over a period of time. You say, you got to get your 10,000 steps in a day or 12,000 steps in a day, because you're probably burning more through the day doing that. The next one's your exercise. Only a small amount that's burned through exercise. So that's why I'm not a huge advocate of lots and lots of cardio. I do like a bit of high intensity interval training. I do like some cardiovascular work in there, because I think it's quite important. You got heart and lungs for a reason. Your heart's a muscle. You got to train it. But from a body composition point of view, you've got a small amount of energy that you're actually burning with your training. You'll burn more if you run on a treadmill. You run a treadmill for an hour, you'll burn more calories than probably training with weights for an hour. But you're going to do nothing to increase your lean muscle mass, and you're going to do nothing to upregulate your protein synthesis. So resistance training will help increase your protein synthesis or upregulate it, whereas when you are doing a lot of cardiovascular work, you actually do the opposite. So you actually down-regulating your protein synthesis and increasing your body's ability to conserve energy, which is why you see a marathon runner look the way they do, because they're trying to conserve energy. They don't want heaps of muscle mass. They want to be using their aerobic system very efficiently, and they want to be as efficient as they possibly can. Whereas you look at a 100-meter sprinter, they're not necessarily, they're efficient in their running style and everything, but when they're sprinting down, like they've got as much muscle as they possibly can, without looking like a bodybuilder.
They look amazing. Those 100-meter sprinters.
They're absolutely look like a Ferrari, just boom, and then they're off. But you look at the way that they're fueling their body, you look at the way that they train. That's why they look the way they do, and that's why marathon
absolutely maximize the power that they can get through.
Yeah. So it's sort of it gets into energy system training as well, but it's sort of when people want to sort of increase that lean muscle mass or change their body composition, it's about increasing your lean muscle mass, dropping your body fat, and not necessarily simultaneously, because I find that if someone starts at a really sedentary base and they haven't done a lot, you can probably get away with a bit of that. But if you've already been training for that 12 weeks, 12 weeks to say 6 months, you've got a bit of training under your belt. If you want to increase your muscle mass, you've got to actually increase a little bit of body fat as well. You've got to be eating in that surplus, increase your body fat, maybe be in a maintenance phase for a little bit, a couple of mini cuts in there as well. And then, probably spend a bit more time actually building than you do actually cutting, because it's very much harder to build the muscle mass, but it's very easy if you're adherent to lose that body fat.
What do you think about the 2-day fast thing?
Same thing as the intermittent fast. It just controls you go 5 days on, 2 days off. You're just controlling your energy expenditure. Same reason as intermittent fasting. Probably.
So you don't mind that?
Oh, as in, do I like it? Or
yeah,
I've never had anyone on it, but I just look at it and say it probably works the same way that in intermittent fasting would work. You're just controlling the calorie intake, so not necessarily changing what people are eating. So this is just my bias, but and definitely my bias. It's just a lazier way probably of doing it. You don't really want to make that much of a change to what you're doing, but if it's going to be healthier for someone to do that, then they should do it. It's like the training program that I give someone. Yes, it might be really beneficial, but if they're not adherent to it and they just want to sort of come in and just exercise every once in a while, that's a big one we'll cover in the training seminar, looking at the difference between exercising and training. If someone just wants to come in and get a bit of a puff on every so often, but they're adherent to that and they're always doing that, they probably won't get the same, well, they won't get really great results from that. But if that's what they do and they're happy doing that, that's much better than just, getting really down about following something structured.
Yeah. I find that I absolutely have to do things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Like if someone tells me to just go for a run, I can't do it. But if I do interval training, different sort of weights, like strength circuits, I love that stuff. But love boxing, obviously.
But sort of where I work, and especially with the lifting crew, like I train people all different goals, and that's what I try and sort of where the enjoyment comes in. Like that's sort of my three big ones. We've got enjoyment, we've got education and adherence before anything else works. So those three, and I find that if you're educating people and they're understanding what they're doing and they're getting results with what they're doing, they're going to enjoy what they're doing. So they actually understand the process that's going on. So it's not just do this and don't do that. Everything has to be integrated. So if you're, let's say, I've got a couple that want to do the FightFit challenge at the end of the year. They're doing some weights training at the moment. Obviously, they're not going to train like powerlifters, or they're not going to train it's not like a bodybuilding type of session, because they've got to fit their boxing sessions in as well. Because obviously, boxing is the most important thing there. But you've still got to be adherent, and they've still got to enjoy what they're doing. So, but they've got to understand the process of what they're doing and where we're actually heading. So, when they do the challenge, their weight sessions, they'll cut right down. They'll still be doing a little bit because they still want to maintain that strength. If you stop training strength for 8 weeks, you'd lose everything, especially if you've built it up over time. Where I think a lot of people get into trouble maybe with the challenges, they just try and do too much too late. So that it's 8 weeks and they haven't done much for the last 6 months, and all of a sudden they jump in. It's like, right, I've got to do some strength training. I've got to condition. I've got to spar. I've got to do this. Where really, if they're in that boat, they probably should just be boxing and not worry about too much other stuff. Just be specific to what you're doing. The closer you get to competition, the more specific you have to be to what you're doing. So they probably just need to spar.
You're not really going to acquire all the tools. You just have to sort of hone in on what you've got.
Correct. I guess. But if you've been training, like Shek's training to fight his brother at the end of the year.
It's going to be great.
We started off, start of the year. I started him at the start of the year. We did some bit of hypertrophy work and everything. Only the sort of second half of the year, he's hitting we've dropped off a weight session. He's increased his boxing a little bit. And he's doing three strength sessions at the moment, not super crazy. He's incorporating a bit of power work in there, and he's upped his boxing a little bit there. In the next sort of month or so, we'll cut off another strength session. So we only do 2 strength sessions. He'll have probably a strength session and more of a power-based session, and he'll increase his boxing again. So it's not about just throwing things on top. You've always got to integrate depending on your goals. So if your goal is body composition, yes, you might need to increase the amount of weights. You might want to increase the amount of time you're spending lifting weights. But you don't have to cut other stuff out. You just have to look at dropping it down, and you might lessen a little bit of that. You might lessen a little bit of the conditioning you're doing. I still want people, I want to show people how they can do the transformation and still do some of the boxing classes as well, and how you can actually schedule that in so it all works.
Nice.
Because obviously people like doing a bit of everything. Like you said, it's not just I'm doing this and I'm doing this now. You still want to box. You still want to do you still want to go for a run. You still want to do other things as well. You still can. Same with nutrition. You want to eat a Parma on the weekend, absolutely. But if you're eating a Parma 3 times a day and that's your main meal, that's when there's issues. It's the same with training. It's the same with training. You come in, you're squatting 3 times a day, and it's like, come on, we got to settle down a little bit. It's you're going to kill yourself.
Nice.
So it's all about integration.
I've been keeping you a lot longer than I was meant to, mate.
I've lost track.
You're a busy man, I know that. Is there anything else we need to know about the seminars? Any more details that we need to know beforehand?
No, first seminar's on the 7th. We'll run 2. We'll run one at Collingwood in the morning and run. We're still clarifying the times at the moment. We're going to run the training seminars on the 14th of September, and they'll be both in the morning. Again, the first one at Collingwood, the second one at South Melbourne, and we're aiming to start the transformation by the 23rd of September.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we're really, really looking forward to it. Myself, awesome. Bash and Rowan have been, we've been putting in quite a bit of effort to it.
Sweet.
So,
well, this is what we've got access to, guys. This sort of a wealth of knowledge through our coaches. So get involved if you want to do a transformation of any sort. I'd really recommend it. And so would Mark, obviously. So thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you enlightening us all about what the big things are to come. Legend.
Thank you very much, mate.
Right,
Thank you for having me.
Until next time. Thank you very much, guys.
Beautiful.